Of all knowledge that exists, how much do we know? Think about it. If you were to express in a percentage, what would your answer be? Don't worry, even Google can answer that. Intuitively, however, we can guess that these percentages are very low because the process of learning reveals new unknowns every time. As Albert Einstein quipped, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And as Socrates quipped, I know that I'm intelligent because I know that I know nothing. However, this position of not knowing is not very comfortable. Knowledge is a tool for transformation of energy, surrounding, and our own destinies. In the face of uncertainty, humans seek knowledge as a means to navigate the complexities of existence. The discomfort of not knowing stems from a primal urge to control and shape our environment, fulfill aspirations, and mold reality in alignment with our desires. Whether we like it or not, we live in a world that is indifferent to our knowledge of it. And all the knowledge that exists make up the reality that we have to exist in, whether we know them or not. To illustrate this concept, let's explore a very interesting topic in mathematics and statistics. I promise it won't be boring. It's called the simple linear regression model. It's a mathematical model that is used to understand causality. The model tries to predict the value of an outcome of interest based on the values of some other factors that we think affect our outcome of interest. With the recognition of an error term called E. For instance, let's try to explore the history of human flight. The desired outcome is to make man airborne and return them to the ground in a controlled and safe manner. There are so many factors that must come together to generate this outcome, including lift, drag, thrust, weight, control surfaces, materials, power to weight ratio, pilot training, just to name a few. We know now how much of all these variables we need to achieve our desired outcome, controlled flight. Well, to an extent, controlled flight is not yet perfect. There's been at least 100 airplane accidents every year since the Wright brothers invented the airplane in 1903. While the chances of an accident is now very low, there are still things we still do not know about how to achieve controlled flight with 100% certainty. There are also factors that even if we knew about, we don't have the technology to control. For instance, as much as we can reduce the probability of a crash, we can't guarantee the absence of some dangerous situations like dangerous weather conditions, the pilot getting knocked out during the flight, or the pilot getting disoriented, or them not getting enough sleep, random stuff like that. Or even more absurd, if the plane is actually crashing, we can't implement something to temporarily suspend the effect of gravity on that aircraft to prevent the crash and loss of life. In this simple regression model, this set of known and uncontrollable variables is represented in the error term. So the error term captures this set of uncontrollable and unknown variables. Inside this variable E are factors that are real and impactful on the desired outcome of controlled flight, but we do not know them. This is a problem because this affects our ability to control an outcome that we desire. And there are two ways that mankind has tried to solve this problem to regain control. One is to search for an ultimate force. We have very specific requirements for this force. One is that it must be omniscient. It must be capable of having all knowledge so that it knows everything in the error term. Another is that it must be omnipotent. It must know how to possess all energy to control all uncontrollables in the variable E. Any force that satisfies these requirements can have absolute control over our desired outcome. It can make anything it wants, anytime it wants. But how does that help us? The purpose of this force is not about what it wants. We are the one creating it. We need it for something. It's about what we want. And this leads us to the third requirement. The force must be omnibenevolent. The force must want the best for us. Its interest must be in line with our interest. Its desired outcome must be our desired outcome. Now we know what we want. But now, where do we find it? How do we find it? We need to find it. A force that knows all about our universe and controls all the energy in it, such that it can do anything we want. An obvious starting point is to look towards where the universe all began. It makes sense to think that whatever force led to the universe as it is capable of all knowledge within it. The problem is this part of space is not accessible. The universe is about 20 billion years old, and the human race hasn't been here for up to 200,000 years. No one has been around long enough to empirically observe what created the universe. We also do not have the technology, at least not yet, to find the path and travel the distance to where we think it all began, to at least just check it out. We have reached the limit of what we can currently know empirically. A place where I would propose to call the Nnadi Frontier. And let me define what this construct is. So it's like a philosophical allegory or construct that describes the limit of all we know and all we can currently observe empirically with our senses, with the extensions of our senses, including all the technology that we have, and even including rationalization, the psychological or the mental extension of our empirical senses. It's the limit of everything we know. And this limit acts like a mirror. Beyond it lies knowledge that we do not have and we can't access, thereby creating a kind of vacuum that invites us to make attempts at object imagination. Imagination that risks being based on the biased reference to self, as there is nothing observable to reference. At this observable limit, the logical and intellectual honest thing to do is to conclude that so far we have failed to find this ultimate force. But that's boring. It's boring. So what if we let our imaginations run wild? First thing we can do is create this much needed omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent force, since we can't find it. The force knows everything we don't and can get to anywhere we can't, and possibly created the reality that we currently live in. So we can conveniently place it just beyond our limit of empirically observable reality. Now remember, all the mental gymnastics we've done so far is in quest for control. In our aircraft example, we want to ensure maximum certainty of our desired outcome, controlled manned flight. Now we are such control freaks that knowing that this force is omnibenevolent, that this force wants what's best for us, is not enough for us. We want more. We need an actual, kind of like a remote control for this force. We want to actually be able to tell it what we want. We don't want it to decide for us what's best for us. We want to be able to tell it what's best for us. We want to define what's best for us. We want to define what it should do. For this requirement, this force needs to be able to hear, listen, understand our language, see us, and hopefully speak back to us. It needs to be a conscious person, just like us. Can it? Come on. It's our imagination. We are creating this. Of course we can conveniently ascribe it these abilities. Our construction is now complete. We have now created what many will describe as a god. This god has full control of all factors that lead to any outcome of the aircraft, including our desired outcome, controlled manned flight. The obvious drawback of this approach is, since the parameters of this force that supposedly governs us all is left to the unrestricted whims of our imagination, everyone is free to unilaterally and unfalsifiably define what this force is, and they can act to themselves and to others according to their own definition. This creates chaos. Another drawback is the unverifiability. As rational as these God theories may sound, obviously a product of imagination and not objective experience, anyone who buys into the theories does so based on agreement with rationality and never based on independent verification of the knowledge that these theories propose. Let's go back to our problem of knowledge and control and explore a different approach. We can take stock of events in nature that we can observe with our senses. We know that if we jump, we will eventually fall down. We have decided to call this gravity. This is the force to beat in controlled flight. We have also observed that fluid pressure differences creates a force in the direction of the lower pressure. So can we modify the shape of an object such that when it is moving through air, the air pressure below gets bigger than the air pressure above, creating a force that lifts the object? Congratulations, you've created an airplane, an aircraft. You've also extracted a previously unknown factor for successful controlled flight from the epsilon E, pressure difference. This method of inquiry, based on sensory experiences and observation, is called empiricism. The advantage is that this approach to control is based on sensory observations that is largely globally uniform. Whether you're in Asia or Europe or Africa, we can all agree to the same experiences. Fire is hot. If you jump, you will fall. Every method of control or knowledge based on these objective experiences will be globally applicable. The knowledge obtained is also independently and empirically verifiable. If you need some confirmation that acid is corrosive, you can easily dip a finger in concentrated hydrochloric acid and get your answer. If you want to learn how an airplane is able to achieve controlled flight, the knowledge is also freely accessible. This is the core appeal of science: independent verifiability. While knowledge derived from empiricism is empirically verifiable, there is so much empirical verifiable knowledge that we can't learn them all in our lifetime, let alone afford to verify them. But all of this knowledge and more makes up our reality. They affect us regardless of our knowledge or lack thereof. Some years ago, I had to go under the knife for a surgical procedure. I had some pretests that qualified me for the surgery. Then I was administered local anesthesia and finally had the surgery. Before the surgery, I was made to sign off a consent form for anesthesia. It looked like a death warrant. Apparently, I learned that there are some persons that don't wake up from some kind of anesthesia. I love my life, trust me, I do. But I had about a few hours to sign the form and get on with the surgery. So I couldn't practically afford the time or money to set up my own laboratory, review all the components of anesthesia possible, and experiment to confirm that they would give me the correct anesthesia administration. I just signed the damn form and then went in for my surgery. My field of expertise is social science and engineering. The theater that I did the surgery in was a multi-story building. As an engineer, I could empirically show the doctor why the building was sturdy and safe to operate in. But the surgeon can't. He just walks in and does the damn surgery. In this seemingly mundane act, there is a subtle pact of cooperation and some kind of faith. The surgeon has faith in my engineering aspect of science, while I have faith in their medical aspect of science. No matter what your religious inclination is, if you are not an aeronautical engineer and you've been on a plane, you had faith in the aeronautical engineering aspect of science. In essence, as a collective species, while there's still a lot we don't know, science has opened a lot of possibilities. Yet, as individuals, we can't practically and fully access all of these possibilities independently and empirically as fast as we have to if we want to verify everything empirically before we use them. The best we can do is to be intellectually honest in our field, in developing our field of expertise, and we simply trust that others will do theirs, which really is the meaning of faith as defined by the only instance of definition we have in the scripture of Christians, which says that faith is the evidence of things not seen and the substance of things hoped for. In some way, We are all religious. We have to be, to access the largest locus of control available to us individually. And this leads to a seemingly general definition of a religion. A religion, I would propose, should be defined as a tool to expand our locus of control beyond what our knowledge from our individual empirical experiences can afford us. A function that we can all agree that science has so far performed best at. Going by what we've established so far, science is the best performing religion. One we all already follow. And we must be careful to iterate. It is a religion only because the knowledge it generates is impractical to independently and empirically verify before every use. You can't want to get on a plane to travel and practically check by yourself all the aircraft you enter. You can't go and ask the pilot to open up the engines to check that, hey, I want to make sure that everything is good. I want to make sure that you're not drunk. I want to make sure you've had enough sleep. I want to make sure you know what you're doing. You can't practically do that. So that's what I mean here. So, at some level, we have to trust. We have to have faith in the field of aviation, in the airline industry, that they, under the canopy of the discipline of science, of the intellectual honesty that science demands, will do the right thing. Because in our own field of expertise, we're striving to do the same right things. We can't pick science as a religion in forms. So what should we choose then? Atheism? No. Atheism is it's kind of funny to me because atheism seems to be the most popular non-religious alternative in a discussion of religious inclinations, even when atheism suffers the same problem as many religions. Though atheism swears largely by the scientific process, it does a U-turn at a crucial part of scientific knowledge. Do you want to guess? If you guess the Nnadi Frontier, you're right. And the big question of what caused the universe to happen. Thanks to technology and science, we've made progress in finding out these answers. Understanding the formation of the first fabric of biological life, how the elements were formed in the stars, the formation of planets, the birth of galaxies, black holes, stars, suns, and nebulas. But even with technology, there's only so far into the cosmos we can't look, let alone physically get to. We cannot yet achieve even a fraction of significant enough empirical coverage of the vast cosmos to begin a search for its beginnings. The only thing we do have are empirical clues. One of these clues is the red shifting of distant galaxies discovered in 1912, which is due to the Doppler effect. The Doppler effect is a phenomenon in physics that occurs due to the movement of a wave source. Essentially, distant galaxies appear to be kind of running away from us, indicating an expansion of the universe. Rationalizing from this leads to the theory that this expansion has a source point, the Big Bang, which according to Occam's razor, which is a philosophical theory, a philosophical concept. Basically, Occam's razor is the principle of upholding the theory with the least assumptions. So there are many assumptions about, there are many theories in science about the beginning of the universe, but if we go according to the rules of Occam's razor, the Big Bang presents the least assumptions. So the Big Bang currently is science's most plausible theory for the origin of the cosmos. 52 years later, after the discovery of the redshifting of distant galaxies in 1964, another clue was discovered that added credence to the Big Bang theory. Something called the cosmic microwave background radiation, or CMBR for short. This is empirical evidence of the remnants of the wave from the first blast. If you want to read about all of these, they're freely available on the internet. I don't want to get too deep into them in this video. But basically, atheists agree on this particular theory. The difference, the departure of atheists from science is that science does not make presumption about what caused the Big Bang. So basically, you can say the Big Bang is the beginning of all we know about our current universe. But it's ex ante. It's something that we can't even fathom, we can't even imagine, because there's no reference to imagine from. It could be anything that could have happened before the Big Bang. All knowledge that science has gained is based on observations and extrapolations from our observable universe. So to think that whatever exists outside of our observable universe must obey the same laws of ours is quite naive. To think that a force must have been responsible isn't even guaranteed. So you can see this whole dynamic of trying to hypothesize the ex ante of the cosmos. You can see how the exercise falls to the trap of referencing our own selves, what we can relate to, our own visible universe. And we have to be careful of this when trying to think of things that we can't empirically relate to. As far as we are concerned, as far as we know, as far as intellectual honesty is concerned, whatever happened before the Big Bang, whatever caused it, could be anything far distant from what we know or currently experience. So science concludes humbly that we do not know. But the departure of atheism from this is a proposal of an explanation, or more accurately, the definite negation of one, an equal and opposite antithesis of a thesis. There is no God. The reason this claim is as problematic as there is God is that both claims can't be empirically proven. Rightly, all we know points to a very infinitesimally small chance of there being a God. But that's just about it. However useless this small probability is, it has to be acknowledged for the sake of intellectual honesty. The only religious view that can find in forms that you can take in forms that aligns with this science current stance is agnosticism, which suggests that we do not have enough information to conclude on the existence of a God or the non-existence thereof. It's important to clarify here with a warning that there's a trend to try to create a spectrum within agnosticism, agnostic theism versus agnostic atheism. The claim is that an agnostic atheist believes that there is a God but is not sure, while an agnostic theist believes that there is a God and is not sure. So, I'll say that again. An agnostic atheist believes that there is no God but is not sure, while an agnostic theist believes that there is a God but is not sure. It's the greatest mumbo jumbo I've ever come across. It's just a nasty misbag of nonsense, a ploy to allow the indiscipline of intellectual dishonesty seep in, an attempt at people to eat their cake yet have it, to kind of engage in the, will I say, trend or fashion of non-religion, while still sticking to the comfort and the community of religious practices and ideologies. Let's do an anatomy of the word gnosis. It's a Greek word that means knowledge. Knowledge derived from experience. According to the very person that coined the word, in the context of a religious view, Thomas Huxley Henry, it simply means that a man shall not say he knows or believes that which he has no scientific grounds for professing to know or believe. Nobody knows from experience that a God exists, so there is no Gnostic theist. Neither are there Gnostic atheists, because no one knows as well that a God does not exist. We are all agnostics, fundamentally. But when someone decides, despite not knowing, to form, believe, and lean towards some theories about God, they stop being agnostics. They become theists. And this is something we need to clarify. People, when I see agnostics try to create this spectrum, they come across like people that go to, people that are religious are very definitely sure that there is a God. No one is sure. They're not sure. That's what faith is. Faith is, like I said, the evidence of things not seen. So it's an evidence before the fact. So the fact is not there. It's more like a belief. So no one knows. So you can't distinguish yourself from theists by saying you're not sure. They're not sure as well. But the mere fact that you lean towards a theory, whether you're 99% sure or you're 2% sure, that makes you a theist. And yes, atheists are theists as well, because they believe before the fact that a God does not exist. They formed a theory or an anti-theory about a God. That makes them theists, ironically, nonetheless. Hence, As far as religion is concerned, there are only two classifications: agnostics and theists. Days leading up to my surgery, I was asked to pick a date. One would fall within 4 days and the other would fall within 2 weeks. I was shit scared about undergoing the surgery, so initially I opted for the furthest date. I wanted some more time to pray for divine healing. This was when I was still religious. I was following the advice of my then pastor that prayer is like a drug. If it is not working, it may need an increase in dosage. Fortunately, my mom overrode that decision and we opted for the closer date instead. And funny enough, on the day of the surgery, it took just 15 minutes. It was so casual. The surgeon was so casual about it. It was like there was a long queue of people waiting to do almost similar surgeries to me. And it was just another day in the office. And I was done and ready to go home in 15 minutes. Then it dawned on me, I asked myself, if science has gotten us this far, has given us this much control of our circumstances, especially in situations where the only thing an outsider can think intuitively is that this must be hard or almost impossible, but somehow science has helped us to achieve knowledge of things that were previously impossible. Imagine us landing on the moon. In the past, talking about landing on the moon was almost like it was a joke. It was one of those things where you would tell someone that if you want to tell someone that something is not going to happen, you tell them that thing will only happen when we land on the moon. That was how far from reality, from possibility, we consider landing on the moon. But we've done it. We've done the impossible. This is what science allows us to achieve. And this dawned on me after the surgery, and I was like, if science gives us this much control of our circumstances, unlike these religions that are marketed to do the same thing, are we distracted by advancing the course of these religions in the place of that of science? Are we limited in our potential to discover? How much faster will humanity learn the things we don't know and gain even more control if everyone was somehow undistractedly on board with the advancement of science?